Aliens Explored is a podcast exploring famous and obscure cases of UFO sightings, alien abductions and other strange events from both a believing and a sceptical perspective whilst keeping an open mind. I'm Stu Jackson, a professional actor and amateur ufologist with a particular interest in the crop circle phenomenon. I'll be debating that otherworldly visitations are real. The truth is out there.
And I'm Neil Kelly. I'm a professional actor as well and used to work for the military as an intelligence analyst. I'll be arguing from a more doubtful point of view. I mean, it's all a bit far-fetched, isn't it?
23rd of March 1966 in Oklahoma, a civilian pilot and former newspaper publisher witnessed a wingless, fish-shaped UFO. It seemed to be operated by a human being, but it took off at incredible speeds. Join myself and Neil here on Aliens Explored as we discuss the interesting case of William Laxson and the wingless UFO.
Hello listeners and welcome back to Aliens Explored, your weekly look at all the things your governments are hiding from you about their contact with people from other worlds and other dimensions. We know there's a conspiracy out there. I'm one of your hosts, Neil Kelly.
And I'm your co-conspirator, Stu Jackson. There's definitely stuff going on. I mean, whether the governments themselves know, that's another matter.
Well, that's where conspiracy comes in, isn't it? But so this week we're going to look at another an area for conspiracy, this time involving the US Air Force, an old adversary of ours, and we're going to talk about the UFO that apparently landed at Shepherd Air Force Base back in 1966.
Well, it was just outside it was close to the Air Force Base, just outside. Now this is an area, I think it happened about 8 miles south of a town called Temple in Oklahoma. But certainly it was one of the Air Force Base's pilots, civilian pilot and electrical engineering instructor. I believe, William Laxson. He's driving along, minding his own business at 5 o'clock in the morning, as you do, on driving west on Highway 70. Always puts me in mind of that that Route 66 song. when I say this is driving on Highway 70. I don't know. We don't have highway. We have motorways here.
We have motorways, yeah, and they have numbers, but we just say the M1 or the M6.
Well, the closest we get to having a song like Route 66 is Chris Rere's song Road to Hell, which is about the M25 motorway around London. Oh,
well, Billy Bragg did do a good version of Route 66 based on, I think it was the A2 or the A10?
Really?
If you ever plan to head out west, take the highway that goes via Shoebury Ness. It's very Essex.
Anyhow, we've digressed again.
So Shepherd Air Force Base, it's hosted many different units, but for a long time, and I believe at that time it had become part of the Air Training Wing, the flying training. Yes, the 3,630th. How many training wings have they got? 3,630th Flying Training Wing was activated in 1965, and it assumed the helicopter training program. Also, undergraduate pilot training in the T-37 and Northrop T-38 Talon for the West German Air Force, because it's a base for not just US personnel, but NATO and other allies. They were training pilots for the Republic of Vietnam from 1971 to 1975. Much good did it do them.
Okay.
So we're talking about a flying training wing, and where is it based? It's
Well, just to be clear, it's not the Air Force Base itself that's the focus of the story, though, is it? It's someone who works at the Air Force Base.
Yeah, it could be. It could be why it's so difficult to find anything about the 1966.
This is an obscure story. So what happened? You've got this chap, William Laxson. He's driving along, like I say, 5 a.m., Highway 70, when ahead of him, the road is completely blocked by this strange silver aluminium type coloured aircraft. I'm saying aircraft hesitantly because there's no wings on it. He described it as being fish shaped, like a perch. It's in the road.
That's for the anglers in our audience.
Yeah,
like a perch.
Like a perch. It's 75 foot long, nearly 8 foot high. It's on landing gear. It's quite wide. It's 12 foot wide. It's got a plexiglass bubble on top, a 2 foot diameter porthole, a 4 foot tall door, bright lights forward and at the back. And do you know what it puts me in mind of? Do you remember the old Messerschmitt bubble cars?
Yes.
It sounds like a much, much bigger version of one of them.
But and the way you described it sounds like the fuselage of a bomber or something of that sort of era, with the plexiglass kind of dome on the top, where someone with the top gunner would peep out.
Yes, that's definitely a good call. So Laxson stops his car about 300 feet away. Walks towards it. He notices there's some writing in the side. Now, this is English letters. This is not alien lettering, or at least he recognizes it. It's something like, TL138 or TL738 or TLA something or another. And, he can't quite make it.
TLA?
It's either TLA...
As in, do you know what TLA stands for?
No.
3-letter acronym.
Oh, of course, yes. Yes.
So the joke's on him.
It's
taken over 50 years, but...
I should have known that one, because in the automotive industry, we always used to joke, too many TLAs. Yeah.
Well, we'd have meetings, we'd say, we need to sort out the TLAs, and they said, well, what's that? The 3-letter acronyms.
Yeah. So it's either, TLA 138 or 738 or TL4 138 or, he's not entirely sure. But it's something like that. But he sees a man. He sees this bloke with a baseball cap in military fatigues, inspecting the underside of it with a flashlight, who gets into it. And it lifts up vertically with a hissing sound.
So when this guy saw him coming and went, "Oh shit!" and jumped back in, and he's
basically, yeah. And
I've been rumbled. I'm out of here. He jumps in, shuts the door, whizzes off into another dimension.
And it really does whiz off. So it takes off, like I say, with this hissing sound to about a height of 50 foot, and then it heads off in a southeast direction at about 720 miles per hour. Huge speed.
For not for a jet fighter of that era, but
no.
But that's going above the speed of sound, isn't it? Without causing a sonic boom.
Yeah. There's an electrostatic effect as this thing takes off. So basically all the hairs on his arms sort of stood up. There's no traces of it on the floor, but and if it's landed on the road and it's got landing feet,
but the guy actually looked like he could have been US Air Force personnel, just from the fatigues and the cap and baseball cap he was wearing, and
There's another witness to this though, a truck driver, who reported having been followed by this UFO. Then saw it stop or and go off again.
Mm-hmm.
And there's allegedly a third truck driver as well, who sort of claimed a similar thing, claimed to have seen it. But a really weird story, this one. We're obviously not talking about extraterrestrial beings here.
We're certainly talking about technology that we don't have, and certainly didn't have then, or as far as we know, maybe the US government does have those technologies, and it was a secret. But to land it on a public highway, even if it's a fairly deserted one, when there clearly wasn't that much wrong with it. I mean, it was. I just need to make it was just a really pernickety pilot. That I don't like that little rattling. I think I need to land so I can tighten that bolt. And he sort of jumps out and lands it in a really indiscreet place. Jumps out, gets his spanners out, starts tightening it up, and then oh shit, we've been rumbled. Jumps back in his craft and buggers off and lets everyone see it. I mean, yeah, that's not very discreet. So.
Well, it's 5 a.m. in the morning. You know, I agree. It's not very discreet, but I don't know. I mean, I'm struggling to think of a reasonable, rational explanation short of it was some sort of UFO technology that's been reverse engineered, or
it was actually an extraterrestrial. He just happened to look like us.
That's a possibility. It could have been an extraterrestrial in disguise. Maybe
they look enough like us to walk among us. So I can. Do you remember The Invaders?
Yes,
Quinn Martin production. Yeah, and they would walk. You can only tell they were not us because they had a pinky finger that wouldn't bend or something, and
yes,
and then when they died,
only had the 3 fingers. So yeah,
they had this fake finger
didn't bend.
And when they died, they would just evaporate and leave a black stain on the floor or wall. Now this episode was mentioned on a show that we're going to review at some time on Top Secret UFO Projects : Declassified. Sorry, that's a colon as a punctuation mark, not
not your actual colon.
So Top Secret UFO Projects Declassified, which is on Netflix. It's a 6-parter, and someone put a link, a Google. I found it on Google. Someone said last night I was watching Top Secret UFO Projects Declassified and was surprised to see my town / city featured in the show. So Shepherd Air Force Base. It's just. It's not far from Wichita, Texas, is it? It's located 5 miles, that's 8 kilometers for our European listeners, north of the central business district of Wichita Falls in Wichita County, Texas.
I've got this as being Oklahoma. Is that the same?
I don't know how far that is from Oklahoma. I mean, maybe. Yeah, he was outside the base, but actually over the border.
Because this actually happened 8 miles south of, like I say, Temple in Oklahoma. But he did work at
we need to get a there is a map, and it looks like it's right on the border.
Right.
Texas, Oklahoma, Wichita. I'd have to actually let's Google Maps just for quickly.
Okay.
So I need to.
Well, while you're doing that, so
yeah.
I mean, this is probably one of the more unusual cases that you get. And yes, I mean, you mentioned about Top Secret UFO Projects Declassified. We are actually going to be doing a review of that series in a couple of weeks' time. Yes. Might want to listen out for that one.
Or maybe
on it.
Maybe watch the show if you have got if you've got Netflix.
Or if Netflix it's Netflix in the UK. I don't know about other countries.
Right.
We'll look that up ready for the review. Or faith in our opinions, then maybe wait for our review first before watching it.
So Wichita Falls is almost midway between Fort Worth and Dallas, and to the south, and Oklahoma City to the north. It's just near the Oklahoma border before it sort of curves up towards Amarillo. So,
now, one thing I'm quite surprised you haven't put forward a theory on is that he just didn't notice the wings.
It sounds like it's a vertical takeoff aircraft.
Yes,
certainly existed at that time. I think it was actually Britain that pioneered it, wasn't it? With
Harrier jump jet,
with the Harrier jump jet, which has been widely sold, including to the United States. Air
and they
Force
do have very short wings.
They do have very short, stubby wings. Yeah,
they sloped downwards dramatically.
Yeah, and they played a big part in the Falklands War back in 1982. Although they were getting on a bit then, and I think they've largely the kind of role they fulfil has largely been replaced by helicopter gunships. The Apache helicopter probably.
They have
obsolete.
But the difficulty, and I can sort of see the potential for a misidentification with something like the Harrier jump jet. But one thing we can say for certain is that the noise it makes when it takes off cannot be described as a hissing noise.
No, it's a very loud roar of a jet.
It really, really is. The amount of thrust those things have to generate. Apparently, they use a ridiculous amount of fuel.
I believe
which I can imagine. Yeah. So I'm not buying into it being a standard sort of terrestrial vertical.
Well, and certainly Shepherd Air Force Base isn't a place where they test prototype aircraft. It's where they train people in. Also, in lots of non-flying roles, they train a lot of mechanics and technicians there.
And that indeed is what William Laxson's job was as an electrical trainer. Although he was himself a pilot as well. At the time of this incident, he'd racked up something like 8,000 flying hours. So not inexperienced when it comes to aircraft. Also worth mentioning, he was a former newspaper publisher as well.
Right. I can see a motive creeping in here.
Really? I would say it makes him a good witness.
I would say, it makes him a good witness, but also gives him a motive to embellish a story.
You think that's what's going on here?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if he can be taken at his word. If we can trust that what he saw is what he's described is a good description of what he saw, then no, that doesn't really match anything that we know about, does it?
Well, let's look at that in context. 1966. People are. This is a time when people are massively ridiculed because of deliberate government tactics. People are roundly ridiculed and mocked for suggesting the existence of UFOs or aliens or anything like that. He's not going to gain anything financially by doing this. Certainly it doesn't relate to his... If he was still a newspaper publisher, all right, I could give that some credence. But he's not. He's training people on how to be, do electrics on aircraft. That's not going to get him more work talking about something like this.
No, unless that job wasn't going too well, and he thought, "How can I relaunch my publishing career with a bang?" Sorry, I'm fishing here. I'm grasping. I'm casting around for anything that might come to hand. Anything just a moment. Now, yes, I mean, you mentioned about people being ridiculed. This was part of the Project Blue Book. I mean, you will come across this in episode 1 or 2 of the Netflix series if you have access to it where you are. That there was a concern that they were so concerned at the time about enemy aircraft encroaching on US airspace that they were worried that they would be so overwhelmed with calls about UFOs because people have misidentified the moon or a cloud or something, that amidst all that noise, they would lose a report about real enemy aircraft coming. Apparently, there was that because it's the Air Force. That's what they're concerned about, aren't they? They're concerned about defending American airspace.
That makes sense. But even Project Blue Book, which was famed for being very dismissive, should we say, of or at least publicly anyway. Even Project Blue Book looked at this case and said, "Nope, that's a strange one, and we can't answer it."
So they filed it away and didn't talk about it because I believe that Air Force personnel were instructed only to discuss cases where a mundane or prosaic terrestrial cause had been identified.
Yes, that was very much the instruction.
But there's also it's an interesting part of the military psyche. When I was in the military, when I was based in Cyprus, a very popular book that was being passed around. We get it out from our base library. It's a book by a guy called Dixon, Dixon, called On the Psychology of Military Incompetence. And it's what's in the military mindset that causes them to make such colossal fuck ups sometimes. And one of the tendencies of the military mindset is that if you're it's the way intelligence is disseminated. If I tell you something that's quite close to what you already thought was the case, or fits in with everything else you know about something or believe about something, you're far more likely to believe it than if I tell you something that actually flies in the face of all that you thought you knew, even if your hold on that was fairly tenuous. And we've seen that in military history. We saw it with General Montgomery when he was planning Operation Market Garden, taking the 4 bridges over the Rhine in Holland. And he was told that the 4th bridge, the northernmost bridge at Arnhem, which was to be taken by British paratroopers, he was suddenly received intelligence from the Dutch resistance that there was an SS Panzer Division parked nearby on the Veluwe. And he just decided, well, what would an SS Panzer Division be doing there? The answer was they'd been taken out of the line for arrest. But he just decided he didn't believe it. We saw it again in Vietnam. General Westmoreland, right from when American troops when America first sent in ground troops, he was sending reports back to Washington that we're winning this war, we're beating these insurgents, we're getting them hands up, send me more men, and we'll have this thing wrapped up. Basically, we're winning this war. That's the narrative. Suddenly, in February 1968, he received intelligence that a large insurgent force had infiltrated Saigon and Hue in readiness for a massive offensive. And of course, it didn't fit with what he'd been telling Washington and what he'd decided. So he just ignored it. So Americans were completely caught with their pants down when the Tet Offensive was launched. And that is that military mindset to just, I don't know what it is, so I'm just going to pretend it's not there. Or it doesn't fit.
So it doesn't exist, yeah.
Yeah, or we can't counter this, so it doesn't exist. So maybe they are just... we know that we don't want to admit that there are UFOs because we wouldn't know what to do about it. Because if I tell the president that we have these beings or these craft coming into our airspace regularly, flying over sensitive areas, watching what we're doing, the next thing the president's going to say is, well, what are you going to do about it? And I'm going to say, well, I don't know. And they say, yeah, but it's your job. You're fired. I'll get someone else.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right there. And I don't think it's just the US military that's guilty of that. I'm pretty sure the British have been.
Oh, it's the military psyche. I mean, Montgomery, obviously a British general.
Yeah. And do you know what? I even think would go as far as to say that sounds like it's not just the military; it's more of a human condition.
It's a human condition. I guess it comes more to the fore. The military mindset is fairly rigid in many ways, unimaginative, but I suppose in many ways just like a corporate mindset. But they can suddenly find themselves in a position where they're under great pressure to do something very quickly, and where there are no procedures. They just don't know what to do.
Yeah, well, I think we can all be. Certainly, I can be guilty of confirmation bias at times, especially like when it comes to UFOs. Because I want to see a UFO. I don't want to see a flock of geese. I want to see that it's an extraterrestrial craft. So that's what I see. I mean, I flatter myself that I'm not too bad. Certainly, there are people out there who are more susceptible to confirmation bias, but yeah, I think we're all capable of that. Anyway, we've digressed quite massively.
Yeah,
but it's good to get that sort of that insight and that that background. But let's summarise our thoughts on this this situation with poor old William Laxson here. So, what do you think, Neil? Is it an extraterrestrial vehicle that is seen? Is it an experimental craft? Is it? What is it? What's he seen?
I don't know. I mean, based on what he described, I mean, maybe. He's so used to being around an Air Force base that he just automatically looked for similarities. He just looked for ways in which it might be an American aircraft of some kind. The lettering on the side, the way the guy was dressed, the craft itself, just the way it was built with the little turret on the top. He's describing what looks like the fuselage of an aircraft of that era or earlier. That's what he saw, but then it behaved in a way that he wasn't used to seeing. I don't know what he saw. He either saw something that was extraterrestrial, or he saw something terrestrial but which had capabilities that he was unaware that any of our aircraft had. And what was it doing there on the road anyway? What was this?
Well, that's quite a mystery in of itself. Although, I think when you're dealing with an aircraft, if it's got a problem, you need to deal with that shit there, as soon as possible. You don't just oh, there's a funny old rattle. Oh, look, there's smoke coming from the engine. Well, it'll be fine. I'll just carry on. It's not like my 15-year-old car.
No, so he just said, well, actually, let's just sit down here quickly. I'll spray some WD-40 on the flux capacitor, and we'll be off. Actually, one thing that reminds me of
duct tape on it. Yeah, it'd be fine.
We talked about the TV series The Invaders. When did that launch? That must have been around that time.
That was in the 60s, yeah.
It was in the 60s, and it always started with this guy on a lonely road. He decides to take a shortcut on this lonely road, and that's where he sees this UFO coming down. He's all, and that must have been on television all the time at the time he saw this. So here he is on this lonely road, and suddenly sees something. He thinks, it's. I wonder if he did expect he was going to be murdered by an invader. That thing, didn't they put on your neck and it would kill you.
But then he saw a person he didn't see, an alien invader.
That's what they look like in the Invaders. To save on prosthetics and makeup, and they look like us.
You've got a point. I mean, I'm going to theorise that what this was man-made. It was a terrestrial vehicle, but reverse engineered from UFO technology. I'm absolutely confident that that's happened and is happening to this day.
And that's where we part ways.
They have crashed UFOs that they must have taken apart, figured out how they work, or as best they can. I mean, you know, look at Bob Lazar and the work he's done, you know. So, yeah, that's what I think. But what do you think, listeners? This is an obscure case. Had you even heard of it? I hadn't heard of it till recently.
I hadn't, and even when I tried to look it up, couldn't find anything about it. I could find, I know where Shepherd Air Force Base is, and I could find lots of more recent sightings. There was one, I think it was in the Daily Express, that Google Earth had picked up what looked like an aircraft with a cloaking device. That you can see two aircraft there, and one of them is virtually invisible.
Yes, we're going to be discussing that very case in a future episode.
Well, I won't blow my, I won't blast my opinion out.
I'll stop you there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
but yes, well, I mean, UFO sightings around Air Force bases is not an uncommon thing. But yeah, this was definitely a bit more unusual. So yes, listeners, do let us know if you've heard of it before. If you haven't heard of it, what you think this thing could have been, because we're a little bit stumped here on Aliens Explored. Yeah, you can let us know via the usual means. You can email us aliensexplored@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter. Or you can find our website, aliensexplored.com. And if you could leave us a cheeky review wherever you listen to your podcasts as well, that really helps small little podcasts like ours. Now, next week, we've got something a little bit different. Next week is episode 80, and we're not going to be doing our usual kind of episode, but instead, it's all hush-hush at the moment, but we have a big, huge, massive announcement next week, haven't we, Neil?
We have.
And we can't say any more than that. So
you notice how I said nothing more than that.
Absolutely. So we have to keep it under wraps for now, but you definitely don't want to miss episode 80, because we'll be sharing something very, very exciting with you all. So in the meantime, keep watching those whatever the hell they are blocking the road ahead of you.
And keep disbelieving those official explanations.
And keep watching the stories. Take care for now.
Bye-bye.
Aliens Explored is a Fecal Films production in association with Juicy Falls. Music by Darren Mafucci and editing by Stu Jackson. Find us on Twitter or Facebook by searching Aliens Explored, or visit us on aliensexplored.com.